Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a magnifying glass to a single, beautifully preserved document from over a century ago. At first glance, it's just a piece of 1895 administrative history, standard, dry paperwork. But as we break it down together, you're going to see it reveals a surprisingly relatable story about human nature, logistics, and what I like to call the Great Kitchen Heist. So, here's the central question we're tackling. How did a high-ranking prison inspector general in 1895 try to stop what essentially amounts to an inside job in the kitchen? It's so easy for us to think of history purely in terms of massive events, right? Grand, sweeping narratives. But actually, history is also made up of the everyday, mundane realities, literally like a manager pulling their hair out over missing inventory. We're looking at a timeless struggle against petty theft, captured perfectly in a formal bureaucratic memo. Okay, let's dive right into this. Look at this beautifully aged, typewritten historical artifact we're examining today. You can literally see the passage of time on the paper itself, the slight fading of the ink, the super formal layout, that distinct typography of the era. It's Circular Memo number 6 from the jail department, stamped with the year 1895. What we're looking at here is a physical piece of a massive colonial administrative machine, and honestly, it brilliantly illustrates how even the absolute smallest details of daily operation were meticulously documented. First things first, let's ground ourselves in exactly where and when this is all going down. Just looking at the header information, the date is May 17th, 1895. We're in Lucknow, which is listed as the origin point overseeing the northwestern provinces and Oudh. This whole thing falls under the jurisdiction of the jail department, officially categorized as Circular Memo number 6. Just by strictly reading these few lines at the very top of the page, we instantly establish the physical setting and the time period. It places us firmly within the complex, highly regulated colonial Indian prison system of the late 19th century. Now, what's really fascinating here is the strict chain of command this document reveals, because this isn't just some casual note passed between colleagues. It reads, from the Inspector General of Prisons to all superintendents of jails. The Inspector General is at the absolute top of the provincial prison hierarchy. When a circular memo comes down from this office, it is a non-negotiable directive. Every single superintendent across the entire province of Oudh and the northwestern provinces is required to read this, absorb it, and act on it immediately. I mean, it's a massive broadcast to the entire regional system. So, with all that heavy, formal, bureaucratic machinery in motion, what is this urgent, top-level directive actually about? Well, look right in the middle. Subject: supply of oil and condiments to prisoners. Yep. Cooking oil and spices. Despite the severe, formal tone of the memo and the sheer weight of the Inspector General's office behind it, this entire bureaucratic exercise is just about managing the kitchen pantry. It's such a wonderful, almost funny contrast between the high-level authority issuing the document and the incredibly granular, everyday nature of what they're actually trying to control. And wow, we really have to talk about who is sending this out. Right at the bottom, we get the authoritative sign-off of Jeffrey C. Hall. Notice the credentials here, FRCS, and his rank, Surgeon Lieutenant Colonel. He's the officiating Inspector General of Prisons. Just think about this for a second. You have a highly educated, highly ranked medical and military officer, a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons no less, and he is sitting at his desk in Lucknow, stressing out over whether someone is stealing the cooking oil. It adds this perfect touch of historical irony to the whole situation. So, the crucial point here is understanding the dual anxieties Sergeant Lieutenant Colonel Hall is facing. On one hand, you've got his first major concern, making sure the prisoners are actually getting their full allotted supply of food, oil, and condiments. As a medical man, meeting nutritional minimums was likely a very real concern for him. But standing squarely in the way of that goal is a massive roadblock: speculations by the cooks. He has an internal leak in his system. He absolutely has to feed the inmates properly, but he knows for a fact that kitchen staff is skimming the good stuff right off the top before it ever reaches the prisoners' plates. And I love the term he uses here, peculations. Peculation essentially means the act of stealing or embezzling goods, especially those that have been entrusted to your care. So the cooks aren't just breaking in and taking things, they're actively betraying a trust. They have direct access to the oil and spices to do their jobs, and they're just quietly pocketing some for themselves. It's a very polite, very 19th century administrative way of saying, hey, your staff is embezzling the groceries. Now, we also need to define exactly where this vulnerable supply chain actually begins. The document specifically mentions the goods moving from the go-down. A go-down is basically a warehouse or storage place for goods. It's a term widely used in India and East Asia. This is their secure storage vault. The oil and the condiments, they are perfectly safe while they're locked in the godown. The problem, the Great Kitchen Heist itself, happens the exact moment those items leave the safety of the warehouse. Let's move on and see how this builds, visually mapping out the exact logistics the Inspector General is scrutinizing here. Here's the path of vulnerability. Step 1. The goods are requisitioned from the godown. Step 2. They're transported across the prison yard. The memo explicitly asks, under whose care are they sent, which perfectly highlights the chain of custody. And finally, Step 3. They arrive at the cookhouse, where the cooks finally get their hands on them. Hall knows that somewhere between Step 1 and Step 3, the oil and condiments are simply vanishing into thin air. So, to stop this, Hall isn't just complaining about it, he's demanding a full-blown audit. He puts the burden directly on the jail's superintendents, requiring them to explicitly report back to him on 4 specific things. First, what exact steps are taken to ensure the full supply reaches the prisoners? Second, the exact physical method of how items are sent from the godown to the cookhouse. Third, exactly who is keeping an eye on them during transport. And fourth, their specific strategies for preventing peculations by the cooks. He wants cold, hard proof that their kitchens are completely secure from internal theft. Let's take a step back for a minute and look at why this matters so much for our understanding of history and administration. When we zoom out from the archaic language, the old typewritten text, and that 1895 date, what we are really looking at here is the micromanagement of human nature. This single directive represents a totally universal administrative anxiety. I mean, managing people, securing a supply chain against internal shrinkage, trying to create fail-proof systems. These are problems that completely transcend time. A manager in a modern restaurant or warehouse today would look at this 1895 memo and completely 100% understand the Inspector General's frustration. And that brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought to leave you with today. We've just seen a surgeon lieutenant colonel leverage the entire weight of a colonial prison bureaucracy just to track down missing cooking oil. So if a highly regimented, heavily guarded 1895 prison system couldn't easily stop its own cooks from skimming the spices, can any supply chain ever truly be completely secure from human nature? It's a fascinating question about trust and logistics that remains just as relevant today as it was over 100 years ago. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. I hope you walk away from this explainer looking at old documents in a completely new light.